Gates, man, the verdict is in. Told y'all I'll be back. I'll be back following this, man. They convicted him, man. It ain't looking too good, but it wasn't self-defense, man. It gotta be, it wasn't deadly force. You can fight. You can fight. Even if you getting jumped, that's not deadly force, y'all. Especially not at school, not on school grounds where you don't even supposed to have a weapon. But let's see what they getting. Let's see what they talking about.
So joining us right now to break down all of these developments that we've learned today is former federal prosecutor and legal analyst Nima Rahmani. Thanks so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox.
Thanks for having me, Anna. Great to be here.
Of course. So just as this verdict comes out, what was your immediate reaction? How did the jury ultimately come to this conclusion?
Well, this was a very quick deliberation, 3 hours, and I think it's a testament to the strength of the prosecution's case. But frankly, the fact that much of the evidence wasn't in dispute here. I mean, really, there was a question of, was Carmelo Anthony shoved with one arm or two? What was the weight difference between him and Austin Metcalf? Was it 50 pounds or 100 pounds? Did they have a right to be in the tent? Was it normal to go into a rival team's tent? But really, it's a question of, was his use of force reasonable and proportionate? Because it has to be objectively reasonable. And this applies in every state, not just the state of Texas. You can't bring a proverbial knife to a fist fight. And this wasn't even punching. This was.
That's what I was saying. Every state. It ain't certain states. It's every state. You can't retaliate with deadly force if you're not met with deadly force. It was not self-defense. And people are outraged about, it's not true. It was not self-defense. He was not getting jumped. He was not getting beat up. Even if he was punched in the face, you can't stab somebody because they punched you in the face. It's crazy.
Pushing and shoving, and maintained the whole time that this was an unnecessary escalation under the circumstances. Stabbing someone in the chest just because you've been shoved is not self-defense under the law, because it's not objectively reasonable. You shouldn't have a knife at a track event. I know the defense was arguing that it was a tool and not a weapon, but I don't think that really resonated with the jurors. And of course, the fact that they were sequestered means that they wanted to wrap this up as quickly as possible and get home. So big win for the prosecution. I think the only chance that the defense had in this case would be if Carmelo Anthony testified. And if he testified that he believed that he was at imminent risk of death or serious bodily injury. If he was able to convince the jurors that he was genuine in his fear, even though it was unreasonable under Texas state law, that would have reduced murder to manslaughter. And that sentence would have been 2 to 20 years. But when Carmelo Anthony did not take the stand, the jurors were left with really an all or nothing proposition. Was this reasonable? Was it not? And when it was not reasonable, there was only one.
It was not reasonable at all. It's not what it is. If I was going to school, like the school I went to, like other schools used to come to our school and jump kids. You feel what I'm saying? It's just school rivals. It's just what it was. Like they literally will pull up, jump out of cars 3-4 deep and jump dudes. And if the person that was getting jumped pulled out a knife and unalived somebody while he was getting jumped, the whole town would be like, he going to jail. It don't matter if you getting jumped. You going to jail. Fight back. If they just fighting you with feet and feet and hands, and you pull out a knife and stab one of them, unalive one of them, everybody and their mama know you going to jail. Stop playing.
One reasonable verdict, and that's guilty of first-degree murder.
And do you think keeping Carmelo Anthony out of the witness box was the right call in this situation?
I do not. And I know he would have been subject to a grueling cross-examination, and I understand why the defense did what they did. Some of his statements did come out during the prosecution's case that, he told Metcalf not to touch him, that he was acting in self-defense. But the conventional wisdom in these cases is, if you're going to present a self-defense argument or defense, you have to take the stand. You have to explain to the jurors and look them in the eye why you believe that you would be killed or why you believe that you would suffer serious bodily injury. I don't think there's any reasonable world where Carmelo Anthony thought that he was going to suffer serious bodily injury. There was a lot of other kids there. There were coaches. I know maybe he thought he was going to be jumped. He was surrounded by Metcalf and his twin brother, but nothing had reached the point where he was going to be severely physically assaulted. It was just a push. The response was disproportionate. You don't stab someone in the chest simply because you're pushed. And I think the result would have been the same regardless of the race of the defendant and the victim. Obviously, a lot of people have talked about this all-white jury, and I'm not.
I don't think he should have got convicted for murder, though. Manslaughter, yes. Murder, first-degree murder, no. That's not fair. That's where the racism come into play. The all-white jury convicted for murder, first degree. Nah, he shouldn't have got all that. He should have definitely got manslaughter. You know what I'm saying? I understand that part, but murder in the first it's kind of excessive, and I can understand why, like, the protests that erupted and they're mad in front of the courthouse because first degree, that's excessive. I ain't even gonna lie to you. It should have been manslaughter. And hopefully on his appeal, he could get it appealed down to manslaughter. But in my opinion, I don't think it should be first degree murder.
Naive. I mean, the racial overtones in this case, can't be ignored. You have Black Panthers, you have Proud Boys outside that courthouse. But if you're just looking at this and you're colorblind, I do think this was the just result. And the result would have been the same regardless of the race of the victim and the defendant, or at least it should have been.
We've been talking about how quickly things moved in reaching this verdict. Do you think the jury kind of was leaning one way all along, or was there maybe a turning point that caused them to ultimately decide that he's guilty?
I think this outcome was inevitable, regardless of who the jurors were. The conventional wisdom, again, is that not only does the defendant have to take the stand, but in most cases, jurors tend to deliberate. This is a rule of thumb. Approximately 1 hour for each day of witness testimony. This was obviously much shorter than that. And it just goes to show how strong the prosecution's case was. Maybe there were 1 or 2 holdout jurors in the beginning, but the fact that you got to first degree murder, not a compromise verdict here, not a mixed verdict on manslaughter, and you got there so quickly, leads me to believe that the vast majority of the jurors were decided even before closing arguments when they went into that jury deliberation room, because the deliberation was so short. Short verdict tends to either be a very strong prosecution case or a very strong defense case. And in this case, there was no doubt that this was a very strong and compelling prosecution case. And I know the defense will take his chance on appeal. And, the defense has also chosen to have the jury decide the sentence. Now, this is one thing that's unique about Texas, Anna, is defendants can choose to have a judge sentence them or a jury. This is not the case in most states. So right now, Carmelo Anthony's mom is, I believe, she's on the witness stand, she's testifying or about her son trying to really get a reduced sentence, because the range is very broad here. We're talking about anywhere from 5 years to 99 years. And it's very easy to say someone's guilty, but it's also very different to look them in the eye and look their family in the eye and sentence them to max them out. So it's going to be interesting to see what the jurors do. I do think he's probably going to get, decades in state prison, but I don't think he's going to get anywhere near the max. And for everyone that's talking about the death penalty, I just want folks to know the death penalty is not an option in this case. The prosecution didn't seek it. And generally, the Supreme Court has said that the death penalty is inappropriate for minors. And of course, Carmelo Anthony was, I believe, a minor at the time, even though he can be prosecuted as an adult under Texas state law.
And you talked about Carmelo Anthony's mother being on the witness stand. One thing that kind of stood out to me today was that the attorneys waived those opening statements in the punishment phase, and they went straight to that witness testimony. What does that tell you about the strategy of both sides? And is that an unusual thing in a case like this?
Well, I think the lawyers want to be respectful of the jurors. Sometimes the jurors don't necessarily know that there's going to be a second phase of the case, because obviously if he were found to be not guilty, the jurors would not deliberate on punishment. So whether it's punishment or whether it is punitive damages, sometimes jurors don't necessarily know that there's going to be a second phase to the case. Sometimes the judge does tell them. But the reality here is it is a serious imposition on an individual's time to be seated as a juror, especially in a very serious case like this. There's people on all sides, on social media, traditional media. We've been covering it now for weeks, right? That have very strong views about this case. They're not deaf. They understand that there's people outside protesting. They've had their phones taken away from them. They can only communicate with family members in case it's an emergency. They're supposed to have no contact with the outside world. So now you're asking them to sit in judgment for additional days potentially to decide the punishment of this young man. And obviously that is a very important role that they play in our criminal justice system. But if you're the lawyers here, you really want to be sensitive to their time. What is going to be said in opening statement during this second?
I'm gonna stop the video right here. I'm gonna put the link in the description, but I just feel like they went about it all wrong. The father was there on the first day. You know what I mean? The father of the deceased. He was there the first day. He wanted to forgive him. They should have kept the father on their side. The father would have testified, and they'd have been more lenient towards him. The father forgave him, but you know what I'm saying? You know, all this race hustling, they kicked the father out and made up all type of narratives. He was being jumped and this, that, and the third, and now the truth is coming out, and now he's getting more. And they gave him a plea. They wanted him to plead out, but now he's getting way more than he was supposed to. You know what I'm saying? Like, they done spent his GoFundMe, so they couldn't get him the right attorney. It's a lot of factors that rendered this decision, and it's like people are gonna skip over all of them, but the first factor is the father came to the press conference the first day it happened, wanting to forgive him and be there for Carmelo Anthony, and the lawyer kicked him out. And then they raised money for his defense attorney, and the mother spent the money. Like, come on, man. Like, they're going to leave a lot out, and let's keep the facts straight. Everybody know if that person ain't come at you with a knife, you can't come at them with a knife. If he pushed you, you should have pushed him back. A lot of people get pushed. A lot of people get punched. Like, but put your hands up, fight. But the verdict is in. 2 lives are gone. 2 young lives is gone. It's sad, and protesting and fighting is not gonna change the verdict. Maybe it might change it on appeal. Hopefully he get a lesser charge like manslaughter, but this ain't gonna bring that other boy back. So, you know, Tommy G, this Tommy G TV. Like, share, subscribe, comment. Bad news, man. I'm out.